Hello there. Happy Wednesday or draft eve, whatever you want to call this. NHL draft starts on Thursday. For today's show, we're going to get into Ron Hextall speaking to the media, updating the statuses of Evgeni Malkin and Kris Letang, which has been basically a daily tradition on this podcast for the last month or two. Don't worry, we got about a week until this is going to be all done, hopefully less. And then I can stop talking about that for the rest of the offseason. Also going to get into Rob Rossi's report on The Athletic and what the Penguins have reportedly offered Malkin and what he could be potentially swayed to do if the Penguins keep that AAV where it is. We're also going to get into the Penguins schedule. That was released today. I'll give my early thoughts on that. And then if there is time, I'm going to go into the full draft board that Jason and I have. I've given some teases, some different categories, but for today, I'm going to go into all the categories that we have with all the players that we have there. So without further ado, let's get right on into it.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. You can also follow the show's Twitter at @Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. So let's get right on into the first topic of the day. Ron Hextall speaking his pre-draft press conference with the media today. And the first order of business, he touched on Kris Letang, and he basically confirmed DK's report of DK Pittsburgh Sports. And he said he believes he is close to getting a deal done with Kris Letang. He actually says he would be surprised if he does not get an extension done with Letang. He's hoping to have it finalized over the next day or two. I think he said they have a few more details to iron out, but basically says there's a really good chance that they get this done before they leave the draft on Friday and Saturday. So that's great news. The fact that he's very likely going to be locked up for the foreseeable future, it means so much. There's just, again, I'll say it for the 100th time on this podcast, there's no one on the free agent market or the trade market that is going to come in here and play the minutes that Kris Letang does and play them as well as Kris Letang does. So very good news there from Ron Hextall. Also spoke about Evgeni Malkin. He said they're not as close with him, but he did meet with J.P. Barry, the agent for Evgeni Malkin, on Tuesday night. He expects that to continue on through the week here, I'm sure, into the weekend if there's no deal and all that stuff. That's just basically par for the course. Now, Rob Rossi of The Athletic, he did come out with another story today about Evgeni Malkin and Kris Letang, if I can load it up here. And, he spoke to some sources, both league-wide and team-wide. And he said first off about Letang, Letang obviously is going to get a raise. He thinks it's going to be closer to the $8 million range when it is all said and done. He also said Hextall has warmed up to the idea of Letang's ask of a contract for 4 to 5 years. So, I know DK is saying it's probably going to be 3. Rossi's saying, it could be 4 to 5. We're just going to have to see on that. Either way, I think the term is going to be right around 8, if not a little more. Now, this was the big kicker with Malkin from Rossi. He said, Gino would like to be in that salary range, but the Penguins want to retain Malkin and Letang at around $14 million combined annually so they can leave enough room under the cap to make other roster moves. The Penguins currently have $21.4 million in projected cap space. Okay, I understand that mentality. You want to, lock them up for, I guess, as little as you can because you want to make changes to the the outer edges of your roster, but also, I guess, not giving up players from your team in order to do that. But if you want to just give Malkin a little bit more money and a little more term, the Penguins can still do that. I mean, certain people, I think, in the Pittsburgh hockey community have brainwashed fans into thinking that can't be done with only $21 million in cap space. You can literally open up $4 to $5 million and have $26 million to pay those two players, and you will still have money left over to make changes to the other parts of the roster, whether it's bringing in another defenseman, if you trade one of Marcus Pettersson or Brian doing, whether it's, bringing in another forward to replace Kasperi Kapanen, or if you trade Brock McGinn, or, say Danton Heinen doesn't come back, they will have that cap space. So people saying that they're not going to have enough room, that is a myth. They are more than capable of opening up significant cap room to fit both of these players under the salary cap. They've been doing this for 16 years. There's no reason to think that they can't still do it. Rossi also says Gino would like this to be his final NHL contract. He plans on playing more than just a couple of seasons. He says the Penguins' offer to Malkin before they talked on Tuesday was 2 years at $6 million per. So the 2 years part, that was confirmed, I think, by it was another independent outlet. I'm forgetting it right now. Pierre LeBrun of The Athletic. He was the one that said originally it was 2 years. We didn't have the AAV amount. Rossi was able to come in with the AAV. $6 million. I get why they're doing the 2 years, $6 million per stuff. They're concerned with the injuries. Who knows if he's gonna, I guess, fall off after year two. They're being cautious. I get that side of it. Overall though, you should still bump that up, I think, at least a little bit. But Ross, this is the big kicker here. Malkin could be willing to take such a drastic salary reduction of $3.5 million, but only if the Penguins sign him for 4 years, a league source and team source said to him. Okay, where's the problem here? If a steal of a contract, 4 years times $6 million per, I mean, that if Malkin is going to do that, and that is true from Rossi, why has a deal not been agreed to yet? That does not make any sense to me. I don't want to sit here and, continue to say that Hextall is playing hardball with him. He probably is in some capacity, but, this should be a very easy negotiation. I mean, if he is willing to take that drastic of a pay cut, but still get the term that he wants so he can go out with Sidney Crosby and Kris Letang together, why has the deal not been reached? And yeah, you can point to him not being as durable as he used to be. Sure, you can point to him not being as good as he used to be at 5v5, but the team is going to flat out stink when that contract is up, when Kris Letang contract is up, when Sidney Crosby's contract is up. Who gives a crap about term in these situations? I keep seeing that sentiment from some people in the Penguins fan base. Well, that term has to make sense for the Penguins and all this stuff. And it's like, no, it really does not. Sure, does the money need to make sense? Yeah, I can listen to that argument, but the term really doesn't. I mean, 4 to 5 years, the team is going to stink at that point, no matter what. Even if you bring in, say, Vincent Trocheck or whoever else that's a UFA and Malkin walks, the team is still not going to be good when Sidney Crosby and Kris Letang's contracts are up, when hopefully Kris Letang does sign that contract. So I don't really know where that weird take is coming from. It's a pointless argument, I think, at least to me. The report goes on to say some other stuff that Malkin feels the Penguins have not shown him respect deserving of a legacy player. I don't really know if I buy that, to be honest. I mean, it's fine if the Penguins are prioritizing Kris Letang over everyone else. I mean, he's when it comes to players at their respective positions, and I've said this a lot this week and last week, no disrespect to Evgeni Malkin, Kris Letang is more elite at his position right now than Evgeni Malkin is at his position. But, a big compromise for Gino's contract, just do 3 times 6.5. That honestly could work. He goes out with Sid. He potentially goes out with Letang. They're both basically 40. They're all basically 40 at that point anyway. Sure, does he take a $3 million pay cut? Yeah, but at least you bump his salary up a little bit and you give him an extra year. That's not 2 years if he's not, already getting an extra year offered. And hopefully that works for both parties. These should be very easy negotiations. It should not be taking this long to agree to a contract for one or both players. I've had that take all off season. I'm gonna stand by it now. I'll especially stand by it if one of them walks. probably if one does block, it's going to be Evgeni Malkin. But I'm tired of just doing this dance. I think every day. Well, hopefully the Letang extension will be announced either Thursday or Friday, and then hopefully a Malkin extension will be announced shortly after that. So that wraps up this first segment of today's episode. Coming up in the second segment, we're going to get into the Penguins' schedule and some interesting findings that when I dove a little deeper into it, I was able to find some cool stuff about the Penguins' schedule overall. I'm just losing my words for some reason. I guess it's just because it's late at night. But before I get to that, BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. You can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL playoffs and Major League Baseball. Well, the NHL playoffs are over, but still, especially Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continuous source for all of your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And the site remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news. This season, BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. That is BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, I'm back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. You can also follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. So let's get into the Pittsburgh Penguins 2022-2023 schedule that was announced officially today. First off, I will let you all know, in case you all, if any of you all are wondering if I'm going to come up to a game or two this coming season, yes. The plan right now, I'm trying to come up for November 15th, which is my birthday. They're playing the Toronto Maple Leafs at PPG Paints Arena. Once tickets go on sale, I am going to purchase one, and I think I'm definitely going to be there. I think it'll be the first game that I'll be in attendance for since I started doing this podcast. And if a lot of you go, I can't wait to hopefully meet some of you all, chat with you all. I think that would be just absolutely awesome if I got to meet some of the listeners that obviously listen to me speak a bunch of nonsense about this team. But wanted to put that out there before I really dive into this. But Penguins, they officially open their season Thursday, October 13th against the Arizona Coyotes. They will then play the Tampa Bay Lightning on the 15th. Then they have Montreal, Los Angeles, and then they have a whole lot of road games. In fact, 14 of the Penguins' first 21 games are on the road. That's something you don't usually see for a team starting the season. I don't know why the schedule makers made it that way. I don't know if PPG Paints Arena has a bunch of concerts during the final week of October. I have no idea. But, they have Columbus, Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver, Seattle, basically the entire Western Canada road trip. I had some people that were asking me, why do the start times say all 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock, all this stuff? For the Western Canada games, it says 6 p.m. on the road because that's when it starts, Pacific time and Mountain time and stuff. So for Edmonton, that'll start at 9 o'clock Eastern, Calgary, 10 o'clock, Vancouver, 10 o'clock, Seattle, 10 o'clock, and all that stuff. The California trip, that doesn't take place until about mid-February when they go to Anaheim, Los Angeles, San Jose. Then they finish it with a trip to Long Island to play the Islanders. They also have a lot more back-to-backs this year, 15 of them. Remember, the Penguins this past season were one of the league leaders in the least amount of back-to-back games. I think they only had, it was like 5 to 7, something like that. This next season, they're tied for some of the most back-to-backs in the league. The schedule is going to be pretty crazy for the Penguins. It also is weird. They play some of their rival teams only 3 times. If I can pull up his tweet here from Josh Yohe, they only play the Philadelphia Flyers 3 times next year. Only 1 trip to Philadelphia. So the Penguins can only hear Sidney Crosby get booed once in Philadelphia unless the 2 teams play in the playoff series, and that's probably not going to happen at this point. But that's really sad. There's also only 3 matchups against the Washington Capitals. I just almost lost my voice there. Yeah, so I believe it's only 1 time in Pittsburgh for Penguins Capitals. The other 2 take place in Washington, D.C. I don't know why the league He's doing it like that. I mean, it's also the same for Flames. The Oilers, they only play 3 times. Rangers, Islanders is only 3 times. And, I get it, as Josh says. Seattle's in the league now. You got to account for them too. But, this is painfully dumb. I mean, Pens, Caps, one of the best rivalries in the league. Pens, Flyers, usually one of the best rivalries in the league. Why are you only having those 2 teams play each other 3 times? I get it if it's something like Pittsburgh, Carolina, where that's not really that big of a rivalry. But the fact that you're screwing up big rivalry matchups to have the Penguins play a few other teams one more time that they're not really as big of rivals with, definitely a bit weird, to say the least. There's also a stretch in March where, this could be the big stretch here when there will be maximum takes for the Penguins. Well, there's going to be 2. So if you are someone who likes to see how the fan base reacts to like certain stretches of the schedule and stuff. So obviously circle November 25th on your calendar. That's when I believe it ends, when the Penguins have played their first, close to their first like 2021 games of the season. That'll be, again, 14 of their first 21 are on the road. So circle around the end of November, early December for when the hot take artists are going to come out. And also the 2nd to 3rd week of March. Actually, I should say the first 3 weeks of March. So March 2nd, they go to Tampa Bay. The 4th, they go to Florida. Then they come home to play Columbus, the Islanders, then the Flyers, then the Rangers, then the Canadiens, then the Rangers, and then the Rangers again. This is probably the weirdest thing about the scheduling. I've been watching this sport for basically 20 years of my life at this point. I have never seen a team play another team 3 times in the same week during a full 82-game regular season like this that I have right now with the New York Rangers and the Pittsburgh Penguins. They will play them 1 time at home on March 12th. Then again, they will play that game against Montreal. March 16th, they will play the Rangers at MSG. March 18th, they will play the Rangers again at MSG. 3 games in the span of 6 nights. And it's not a playoff series. I do not know what the schedule makers are doing there. Maybe you'll see more of that in the seasons to come, but that was definitely a bit weird, to say the least, when I stumbled upon that. But overall, I think this is a fine schedule. They have a ton of home games in the second half of the regular season. Their April schedule is fine. Boston, Philadelphia, New Jersey, Minnesota, at Detroit, Chicago, Columbus. They don't play the Rangers for the first time until December 20th. So close to about the halfway point, I should say, of the regular season. They don't play the Capitals until November 9th, if I got that right. Yes, I did. In terms of the other rivalry games, the other teams in the Metro, they play Columbus at the 5th game of the regular season. Looking at other ones, first time they play Philadelphia, Black Friday, November 25th, at the Wells Fargo Center. That's a 5 p.m. start time. They play Carolina for the first time November 29th. So it's not going to be like this regular season where the Penguins don't see the Hurricanes until basically game 50 to 55, or same with the Rangers at that point. They don't play the Islanders until almost 2023. They play them for the first time on December 27th. They don't play the Devils until December 30th. Just looking here to make sure I got every other. I think I got all the big ones that I wanted to hit. So, yeah, it's definitely going to be a very busy schedule up until Black Friday against the Flyers. But after that, they come home for a 5-game homestand. Actually, after that, going into December 12th, they will have 7 of their next 8 at home. So, if they can just tread water on the road at that point, they can come home and, they usually play very well at PPG Paints Arena under Mike Sullivan. So I would have to think that they'll be able to win, I think, most of those games at home. So that wraps up the second segment of the podcast, looking at the Penguins schedule for next season. Coming up in the final segment, we're going to get into the full draft board and, just who we placed in the different categories for this year's draft. Of course, the first round is tomorrow, and bearing something unforeseen, I think the Penguins are going to take a player at pick number 21. So that's all coming up right after this commercial break. All right, I'm back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. You can also follow the show's Twitter at Penguins. So let's get into the full draft board that Jason and I have. So I've already touched on a few of these players. We have them in the hope they fall category. Daniela Yurov, Jesse Marshall has been high on his train on Wednesday. I talked about him either yesterday or a couple days ago. We compare him to Nikita Kucherov and Troy Terry. In my opinion, he's a top 10 talent in this draft. The Russian factor is definitely going to, I think, have him fall, especially with what's going on right now with Kirill Kaprizov and that Flyers goaltending prospect who I think was sent off to a Russian fighting facility or something like that. That's both of these are really scary situations. But Yurov, has a motor, elite skill. He can finish, same thing with Ivan Miroshnichenko. We have him comped to like Timo Meier, Vladimir Tarasenko. He could be ready to go in 2023. Has a heck of a shot. Last summer, he was probably a top 5 player going into this class, but his production dipped a little bit before he was forced to stop playing. But, his cancer prognosis is good, and he is cleared to return to training. So, yeah, in case you did not know that, he was diagnosed with cancer, but, he was able to beat it. He's cleared to return to play. And barring some complications, it looks like he's going to be ready to go. So I would love to have either one of these two players at 21. Frank Nazar, the same thing, but also a couple players that we really didn't get to yet. Pavel Mintnukov, who is a defenseman, 6'1", 197 pounds, a left shot. We have a couple comps, John Carlson, Morgan Riley. He's probably one of the best offensive defensemen in this draft. He has the full toolkit to succeed in the offensive zone. He's also not going to get lost in his own zone. His zone exits are very, very good. He plays an attacking style at all times when he's going into the offensive zone. Again, has a heck of a shot at the point. I think he could also quarterback the power play as well. For those that are concerned about being imported from Russia, don't be. He plays in the CHL, so he should be able to come to the Pittsburgh Penguins or Wilkes-Barre anytime. And then finally, Liam Bichel, excuse me. So we have him comped to Keandre Miller and Eric Chernak. He's 6'5", so I'm sure Brian Burke and Ron Hextall would love someone like that. Very good skater, plays with an edge. His offensive upside, not as much right now, but I think with the right coaching down in Wilkes-Barre and down in some other his junior leagues and potentially up with the Penguins, I think he could potentially grow there. I think he could be a steady second pairing guy. I don't think he's ever going to be a top pairing defenseman, but I do think he can be at least a second pairing guy like a Keandre Miller. Now, for the players that are in range at 21, the players that we put in this category, Owen Pickering, who I did talk about yesterday, Isaac Howard, left winger, a couple comps for him, Braden Point and Matt Zuccarello. He's very dynamic, has beautiful hands. Just put on the highlight clip. The saucer passes that he'll dish up are just absolutely gorgeous. Very strong skater. I think he can improve there as well. Obviously, he's not that big, only 5'2", 182. But I think he definitely, has room to grow a little bit there, can put on some weight and all that. Denton Mayachuk, defenseman, 5'11", 188. Couple comps for him, Adam Fox and Devon Taves. Very great puck mover. He can skate, elite in transition, always makes great decisions with the puck on his stick. Also has a great shot at the point, maybe can quarterback the power play. He hasn't really done that in a lot of his games that I've seen, at least. But, again, he's also not that big of a defenseman either. How much is his, lack of size going to impact his ceiling? But, great hockey sense. And again, great skating, booming shot. He can do it all for you as a defenseman. So, and I think any one of these players will be really good for the Penguins. At 21, Liam Ogren will throw in there as well. Yager Furcus, We compare him to Jake Ensel and Kevin Fiala. He also has a heck of a shot, a little bit of a smaller frame, but he gets to the dirty areas, a la a Patrick Hornquist. So if I were to throw another comp in there, I would kind of compare him to Hornquist a little bit. I guess a Hornquist with a much better release, to say the least, and someone who you can put not just in front of the net, but he can be a trigger man on one of the circles. He can beat defenders one-on-one. And, his playmaking ability is also very good. When we were watching him, looked very similar at times to Phil Kessel with how he was able to dish the puck across the offensive zone. And his release, well, it's not Kessel's, to say the least. I don't think anyone has a release quite like that. It's still pretty good. Now, just some players who we have as Hexy guys, and we have that as players that profile to, past Ron Hextalls and prior selections and Brian Burke's truculence and all that. Again, this does not mean they're bad selections, just guys who fit what they might be looking for. So Ryan Chesley, a defenseman, 6 foot, 195 pounds. He's all situations, who has good skating. He's decent in transition, though doesn't bring a lot of offense just yet. We have him like a Brian Dumoulin, Ryan Lindgren comp, and there's nothing wrong with that kind of player. Dumoulin was very good for this team for many years, and Ryan Lindgren, I think, is on his way to being a very good defenseman for the Rangers. But, I don't think you're going to get a lot of offense out of him. Maverick Lamoureux, another defenseman, 6'7", 200 pounds. That is a perfect Brian Burke truculence pick right there. Nathan Gauthier, center, 6'3", 207 pounds, right-hand shot. We got him compared to Kevin Hayes and Adam Lowry. I've already talked about him a little bit on a prior episode. Classic big body center. But, he's not really elite at anything. He's kind of a late riser. But he's probably only going to be a bottom 6 center if he does make the NHL, in my opinion. And yes, the player that people were talking about on Penguin Twitter today, Rutger McGroarty, right winger, 6'1", 200 pounds. He is highly skilled, though, has a very nice shot, nice vision on the ice. He's great in front of the net. I mean, for God's sake, he weighs a ton. But he also has, again, a nice shot from the outside of the net. His skating, I do think, could use a bit of an improvement, but if it doesn't, I think that's definitely going to impact his ceiling. The comps we have for him, Chris Kreider and Tyler Toffoli. We all saw just what Chris Kreider just did this year. And then lastly, Jimmy Snuggerud, right winger, 6'1", 186 pounds, another comp to Chris Kreider. He's probably not going to be ready until 2025. He's dangerous with the puck, very good one-on-one skill, great vision, elite shot from honestly anywhere on the ice. He can win puck battles for you along the boards. Again, skating's a little bit of a question mark there. Could be his downfall. But, I think there's also potential work to be had there. And then for the lottery tickets, already touched on Brad Lambert, Lane Hudson, Jack Hughes, the other Jack Hughes, and Noah Warren. So the players, I've already said my top two that if they're available at 21, I would take Danilo Yurov or Lane Hudson. Hudson, if he pans out, he's going to be a very good defenseman for years to come. Miro Shineko, I think I would take him if he were there as well. Frank Nazar, if he falls, I would be more than happy to get him. But, if you want to go out there and get a Brad Lambert who, he could succeed. Trust me, I it's kind of 50-50 when it comes to me. I personally am leaning on the side of caution. I don't see it, but these are prospects and anything can really happen. But this spot that the Penguins are in, a lot of times it's a crapshoot. I mean, more times than not, you're probably not going to get a true impact player at the 20 or 21 pick. A lot of times you're just going to get someone who can play in your bottom 6 or something like that. For every, I guess Jake Gensel you find in the NHL draft, even below the first round, or something like that, there's a whole bunch of Kasperi Kapanens out there waiting to find their way onto an NHL roster. So that concludes this episode for the Locked On Penguins podcast. Let me know what you all think about Jason and I's big board. Did you like it? Who do you have higher on your boards than us, just let me know in the YouTube comments. You can send me a DM on Twitter and all that. I have it set up to message requests, but I still check them when I'm DMing people. So let me know, who do you want the Penguins to take tomorrow night in the first round if they do pick, and who else are you looking at them taking in the next few rounds after that? So again, thank you all so much for listening. I really appreciate everyone that listens to this podcast, and we will do another one of these on Thursday. I'm either going to be doing a live stream on the YouTube channel after the Penguins make their pick, or I'm going to do something a little bit before that. I will let you all know either way, whether it's on my Twitter account for the show or my personal Twitter account. So again, thank you all so much for listening, and I'll be back on Thursday.